કનેક્ટ થતા વાર લાગતી લાગે છે.
Yeah, I think એમને ઇન્ટરનેટ નો કનેક્શન નો કઈ પ્રોબ્લેમ લાગે છે એમને કે ગયા વખતે બી એવું થયું હતું ને.
ના એટલે કરાવડાવ્યું એમને. આવતા હોય એવું લાગે છે.
હજુ કશું આવ્યું નથી એમનું.
એટલે હવે એમને ખબર છે ને કે આપણે ફરી મળીએ છીએ. કારણ કે ઘણા વખતથી આવ્યા નથી ને એટલે કદાચ.
Yeah, he might not be knowing. You're right.
Let's see. Let's send him a message saying, "Are you coming back?"
We are back.
અનિલભાઈ મેસેજ મૂકી દેશે ટેક્સ્ટ કરજો.
It's a complex thought process.
It is, sir. It's definitely a process. Anybody can justify anything you want to justify.
They are here. I get.
Okay. So what I was saying is this. It is true, and that if you remember, Lokmanya Tilak and Arvindo were not. Lokmanya Tilak had already died by the time, but Arvindo and Gandhiji never came together in the sense they were diametrically opposite viewpoint. You know, Arvindo believed that violence is justified for the purpose of independence. So did Lokmanya Tilak. Gokhale, who was the Jahal and Mawar, you know, there were two sections in Congress at the time before Gandhi took over the Congress party completely. You know, Gokhale was the one who was pacifist. Tilak was the one who was aggressive. You know, he wrote Gita Rahasya, where he justified violence against Britishers on the ground of Gita, and basically saying is that this is a just war, just like Arjuna is facing Kauravas. I mean, Pandavas are facing Kaurava because it's a just war. That was the argument Tilak made, and Arvindo carried forward the same argument. But Lokmanya Tilak already had died by 1920, and Mahatma Gandhi took over domain of Congress leadership immediately after Lokmanya Tilak died. And Arvindo already had moved away into Pondicherry. He wasn't active anymore. But he was opposing Gandhi's viewpoint from the point of when he was in Pondicherry. So the argument Gandhi made is this. He said that, yes, it is true that violence is condoned in the Shastras based on your life station and based on your caste. And he agreed is that non-violent principle, perfect non-violent principle in this life is not 100% possible. And he said, I agree, is that Hindu scriptures mention and justify violence caused by Kshatriya for the protection of the people, or Raja, or kings, for the protection of the kingdom. But he believed that non-violent is a principle that applies to all the people, regardless of what their station is. So he went beyond that, beyond Gita's concept. So now Nicholas Sutton is writing this. If Gandhi went on other extreme, justifying non-violent principle, one can easily subvert justified violence or just war concept for anything that you want to be justified for. And he gives example of the same thing. He actually wrote this essay after 9/11. You know, the book was written after 9/11. And the title of the book is Holy War, Does Gita Condone Violence? That's the name of the book. And the guy, Steve Rosen, is the editor, who invited about a dozen scholars to write what they see in Gita. How does they see violence versus non-violence? So Nicholas Sutton wrote the essay on behalf of Gandhi's viewpoint and non-violence. So what he makes a point is this, is that terrorists who blew the World Trade Center justified on the ground it's a just war, because just war in their mind is the war that is perpetrated on Islam by non-believers. So any action that they perform is condoned and approved by Allah. So for if God, what the point, and he then basically also said something like Kissinger, I mean, this is his viewpoint. Kissinger justified his violence in during Vietnam War on the ground that there is justified reason to defeat communism. When he expanded the war in the adjoining countries, he justified on the ground that this is in order to defeat communism, which is evil. So his justification of a just war was that we must win the war against evil, which is communism. Justification of the terrorism was we must defeat non-believers, infidels who are waging the war against Islam. So if one goes other extreme of justifying non-violence like Gandhi did, other extreme is also equally dangerous. You know, that anyone can justify any cause and say this is for just cause. I mean, I use an example, and most of us will not agree. When we say Bhagat Singh was a hero, why we say Bhagat Singh was hero? Because he was apne wala. You know, he was doing the same thing. He actually perpetrated a killing of a Britisher who was not responsible of killing Lala Lajpat Rai, because they believed is that they are killing the guy who killed Lala Lajpat Rai, and they killed another guy. Yeah, go ahead.
But in the same token, a soldier who fights for his country is actually and dies, that is a good karma.
Yes, in the domain of
It is of the highest order.
yes, that is the concept of just war. That is based on swadharma, the concept of swadharma, that one does the duty according to his life station and according to the assigned responsibility. Now, same soldier, if he kills outside the war into the society in the civilian life, then becomes a crime. Like the guy who goes in Afghanistan and kills someone, we view that as a justified cause, right? Because we are trying to defeat Taliban. But at the same time, he may go overboard and kill innocent people, or create an environment where he essentially could have not killed and goes and kills. What was Nuremberg trial? You know, if you remember My Lai massacre, let me give you an example, logical example. My Lai, go ahead. Anil bhai, chhod tame. Let me give an example of My Lai massacre during Vietnam War. In 1969, Lieutenant Kelly was responsible for a massacre that happened in Vietnam. What he did, or actually he was a lieutenant who had about a dozen people underneath him. So what he did, in the name of fighting the soldiers, he essentially killed civilians in a town. He ordered, and a dozen of them participated in killing civilian people who had nothing to do with the war. And they basically hided that fact. Now, in those days, there was no direct video. So the video took many weeks before it came to America. And the news, in evening news, people saw the video of My Lai massacre, where normal civilian people were being killed under the guise of warfare. And actually, Lieutenant Kelly, what caused court-martial. You know, same thing happened in Nuremberg trial. You know, the argument that they advanced, German soldiers advanced, is that we did what our superiors told us to do. You know, why did you torture and kill the Jews who were innocent and put them in the death chambers? The argument was there, the people who were being trialed, is that we did what our superiors told us to do. So this was the war, and we were working according to the orders of our superiors. But Nuremberg trial proved the point, is that illegal order or unethical order or immoral order, even if given by superior, cannot be followed through. So one must make a decision of disobeying what you perceive to be immoral or unethical order. So that's the difference. You cannot justify every action on the ground that this is the war and this is justified war. So any action that I perform is legitimate action. It is not. Yeah, Pratap.
No, like that is what I'm saying. Like where the good karmas of a soldier are actually not then the good karmas.
Well, in the context of the society that we live, that's where our thinking comes. Depending upon what your life station is, depending upon what your role in the society is, if you do swadharma, at least is pardonable, as long as swadharma is contingent on sarva dharma. If you do your dharma according to the norms established in the sarva dharma category, that's acceptable in the society.
So
Now, what is the outcome beyond that in moksha is a matter of debate. Gandhi will argue is that any violence is essentially unacceptable, regardless of what the life station is, regardless of where you are. The different scholars will argue other way around, which is the society cannot function if you have soldiers who refuse to fight.
યા તો એટલે અત્યારે આ પેલું અહીંયા આગળના બધા સોલ્જર્સ શું પોલીસો ને બધાનું છે immoral way બધાને આવી રીતે મારે
So
છે.
that's exactly the point. I mean, you can use the same analogy in police brutality, right? Police's action is necessary to control the society at large. But where you draw the line, where you cross the line, it's a matter of ethics and morality.
yeah.
Anil bhai, you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about this Aurobindo and Gandhi's dialogue. So Aurobindo didn't really say that ahimsa is, ahimsa is needed or something, but he saw some fault. There is a long dialogue. I forgot. I think you had sent it sometimes back.
Yeah, right.
But the point I read that, and what Aurobindo said afterwards, I looked into the Aurobindo Ashram's dialogue also, why he would not meet Gandhi. And what he was saying was that this Gandhi's philosophy of ahimsa is faulty, because Gandhi is throwing, actually by doing ahimsa, by his way of ahimsa, he is forcing actually his will. What you saw on that Newsweek article, that was his argument. That was Aurobindo's argument, that it is faulty because by doing his ahimsa, actually he is pushing people into something which is more like an autocratic. That sort of a thinking he had. So I just wanted to say that thing. That was in
That is a
defense of
counterpoint, and it's a very
Aurobindo's theory.
No, you're right. I mean, that's a very counterpoint. Actually, people have made a point is that Gandhi's fasting was essentially coercion of the people. When he started fasting and people started worrying about his life and death, it is a coercion on the people who must make a decision, because they don't make a right decision, Gandhiji may die. So they felt guilty about it. So Gandhiji, in a way, was creating an environment where he was imposing his will by acting in a manner that he made people do they did not want to do. And that's a valid point. Yeah. I mean, that is a pros and cons both ways, but the point, what Nicholas Sutton was making a point is that just as non-violence can be found in extreme in Gandhi's viewpoint, justification of a just war can be easily manufactured by anyone and anybody, anytime, to justify that this is the holy war in the name of Allah or Ishwar or God or Christ or whatever. If you think in 11th century Middle Ages war of jihad, and in the Europe, jihad and what is a Christian word?
Crusade.
Right, crusade. So jihad and crusade were actually the wars they were justifying on the ground is that we are spreading the message of Allah on one side, and the other guy was saying we are spreading the message of Jesus Christ to the other side. And if you don't listen to us, we'll kill you. So they justified on the religious ground the atrocity both sides were committing against each other.
So Rajan bhai, there is not any of this philosophy. I don't care whose philosophy, Hindu, Krishna, Gandhi, take any philosophy. There is not a clear-cut
Direction.
right answer.
No, there is no.
There
It's
is,
a-
it depends. અરવિંદો નું તમે લો તો કે ના ગાંધી આમ કરતો હતો, ગાંધી કે તો અરવિંદો આમ કરતો હતો. Every one of this have a point and counterpoint.
Absolutely right. There is no 100% right.
So an idiot like me, what do I do? What is
Go in the middle path. Go in the
Yes,
middle
bhai.
path. Follow your instinct.
Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam.
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid question.
But even Bhaj Govindam is not right, right?
No, I think that's a valid question. I think it's an individual decision based on your conscience. And there is a slide where we talk about morality and spirituality. How do they intersect with each other? What is moral thing to do? What is ethical thing to do? And what is spiritual thing to do? And where do you draw the line? So we will come to that point, but you're right. There is no one answer to this question.
Because even from the day when we are born, our parents, ના દીકરા આ ખોટું છે આ સાચું છે, ના બેટા આ નહીં આમ કરવાનું, આ નહીં આમ. They are even crucifying us from even our own parents. They want us to walk the same path that they walked. May not be right or wrong, but that's the path they want us to walk on.
Right, right. You're right.
And the moral and ethical practices, Rajendra Bhai, is like the naturally an individual decides, right? It comes to that then that this is what my mind or my thought process told me is the right thing to do.
So let me give example. I mean, just think about it. When Truman became president, actually when FDR died and Truman was the vice president. Now just think about it. In those days, vice president did not know is that America has already created a nuclear bomb. He did not know as a vice president. Only few people, FDR, defense secretary and military guys knew that they have a nuclear bomb, which nobody in the world knew at that time. Now FDR dies in Georgia and Truman becomes president. That is when he's told is that America has a nuclear bomb, that nobody in the world has it. Now, we don't know what FDR would have done because he was already dead. But now, the war in Europe was coming to close. Germany had already surrendered, but Japan refused to surrender. So now, Truman was faced with a crisis, whether he wants to, like they had done Eisenhower's invasion in the Normandy invasion, if you remember, D-Day. So they won the Germany. The question that Truman was facing is this: does he create forces to invade Japan and defeat Japan? The military said that if you invade Japan, there may be a casualty of a couple of 100,000 people. And remember, we already had lost 500,000 people at that time. So invading Japan may mean another 100,000, 200,000 people, American soldiers die, or European together. This option that was given is that we have a secret weapon that can bring Japan to the knees. So he has to make a decision. What is worse? Invading and potentially losing 100,000, 200,000 American soldiers, or killing 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 Japanese people by nuclear bomb. So he made a pivotal decision that he's going to go. You know, only president could make that decision. And remember, nobody in the world at that time knew that America has a capability to destroy Japan. So he makes a decision to go after Nagasaki and Hiroshima. They were 6 days apart in between. So he made a crucial decision that this is one evil where we lose a lot of American soldiers and European soldiers. Another evil is we will have a nuclear bomb killing thousands and thousands of civilians. But that may very well bring Japan to the knees and they may surrender. And Japan did surrender after 2 nuclear bombs fell. But what it did was Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed. So now the moral responsibilities that lay on Truman, you can argue endlessly what was the right decision. Should he have invaded and won the war just like they won against Germany? Or should he have done what he did? The counterpoint is, people have argued, and there is a valid point there too, is that if Truman was faced with the difficulty of doing it to Germany, he may not have done it. But because he was biased and he was a racist, he did not mind killing Japanese people because they were Asians. And remember, at the time in America, there were 120,000 Japanese people who were put in prison, in the prison camps, because they were Japanese American citizens. But because they were they were fighting the war against Japan, they were basically taken from their home and put in the prison camps. So America in general was willing to let Japanese people suffer and die. But America in general was not willing to let Italian and German people to suffer and die, because they are our people. So the argument can be made both ways. So there is no moral issue. I mean, one can argue endlessly about what he should have done. So many times the decisions are not black and white. I mean, I personally feel, this is my view, is that he was somewhat more casual because it was against Japan. If the same decision was made against Germany and Italy, they may not have done it.
I would say 99.9% of decisions are not rational. There is some reason for one side or the other side, because that's what humans are. You get attracted towards what you like. I mean, if we are standing in Kashmir and you got 20 Hindu girls and 20 Muslim girls, who are you going to kill?
Sure. I mean, what
આપણે જ્યાં આગળ બોન્ડ થયા હોય તે આપણને એની જ એફેક્શન થાય ને, બીજાની સામેની તો ના થાય ને.
You're not going to bring up Gita and Quran and શું ભાઈ આ શું કે અરે ભાઈ જે કહેતી ઉતારી નાખો પછી આગળ વાત કરો.
This is a question of moral ethics. I mean, we digressed on the topic of morality and ethics and whatnot. So this is the point that there is no one clear answer to many of these questions.
Okay,
We have to do the action for the benefits of all the people.
it
That's
depends
what
how do you,
moral is then. Yeah?
it depends how do you define all the people. For Japanese, saving 100,000 Japanese was more important than saving 100,000 Germans and Italians.
Sure.
એટલે હવે આપણા કન્ટ્રી, હવે આપણો જ કન્ટ્રી હોય ને આપણે હોય તો આપણા કન્ટ્રીને જ બચાવવાનો પ્રયત્ન કરે ને, બીજાના કન્ટ્રી શું કરવા બચાવવાનો પ્રયત્ન કરે? એ તો દેખીતી જ છે.
And both of them were our enemies at the time. So, Italy and Germany on one side in Europe and Japan on the other side. America decided to hit Japan with a nuclear bomb and didn't do it Germany. Now what, I mean, obviously Germany already had surrendered. What would have happened if Germany did not surrender? Who knows? There is no way to know that.
And then United States paid through his nose to Japan financially after they dropped the bomb.
Absolutely right. Yeah, right. Anyway, I mean, this was a digression, from the original conversation, but I think that's a valid, this interesting subject. This one, the slide, what we were doing is complete now. Now, this is a new slide from Karma Yoga. And how much time do we have, Sukhbhai?
We have,
અહીં આગળ બતાવે છે.
it's about 15 minutes.
Okay, then we can at least talk about a few more slides.
Yeah.
And then we can stop at that one point. So Karma Yoga is the next one topic, so this, I had two lectures on Karma Yoga. One was this one that I put it on what you see now. And there was another lecture that I had used in my government job, management from Karma Yoga point of view. So
Right.
management from Eastern point of view. So what I did was use management techniques and tied into Karma Yoga. And this lecture this one I had prepared for Vivekananda's 150th anniversary. And this was, I gave it in UT, the people like us, you know. So this is the one that I'm using right now. Okay. And I think Anil Bhai already had seen when I prepared it 4 or 5 years ago. I had given to Anil Bhai to make comments on that. So Anil Bhai may remember some of it.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so this is a statement Mahatma Gandhi made, and I thought it was very nice. If all Upanishads and all other scriptures happened all of a sudden to be reduced to ashes, and if only one first verse in Isha Upanishad were left in the memory of Hindus, Hinduism will live forever. So what is that first verse of Isha Upanishad?
Isavasya vidam vidam.
Precisely the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that verse? This is that verse. In this changing world, everything is subject to change. Yet everything is pervaded by the ruling force or the spirit of Lord or Brahman or whatever you want to call that to be. Practice renunciation by being strong in the consciousness of the self. Do not covet, do not run after anyone's wealth. That is the first stanza of Isha Upanishad. So Mahatma Gandhi, most of the times he wrote a commentary, he talked about Gita, but he periodically talked about few Upanishads here and there. And Isha Upanishad is the one that he mentioned occasionally. And this is what he wrote, that if everything dies in Hinduism and the first verse of Isha Upanishad survives, Hinduism will survive. So this is what he meant, is that all universe is pervaded by the Lord. Practice renunciation and do not covet for, do not run after the wealth of others. So that is his principle. Renunciation of material possession is his principle. And that's basic principle of his Karma Yoga. Okay. So next stanza.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Rajan bhai, I know this is a controversial statement I'm making, but I don't care which Swami you take, or Gandhi or anybody,
Right.
all of them, they talk about renunciation, the material, this, that, and the other. But have you seen any Swami residing in a jhopri with a poor guy? They always have to stay with some rich guy, driving them into the Mercedes, and then this, that, and the other. So on one side of your mouth, you're talking about renunciating this, that, and the other. And other side, you are doing this. And I'm sitting in between and saying, what is going on here?
That's why we have to make a decision.
Well, you are right. I mean,
Yeah. Okay. What it is that tena taktena bhunjita ma grudha kasya siddhanam. See, that is how you interpret. See, if you look into the Sanskrit part of it and go back to it, it probably will throw more light to it. I'm not going to jump into anything like that. But what it says is that, you do not covet others' wealth. If you have a wealth, you use it. That is, I don't think they were against that. But there is a coveting part of that one. And the renouncement part was that you renounce it, in sense that you don't have a sense of storage, sense of a grahana. We say, grahya, we just grab it. The grabbing part is probably, this may be grabbing, this may be a very poor translation right now on the spur, but that is what it is. In fact, Gandhiji lived with Birla's in a Birla house. But look at his possession, look at his lifestyle. He never had any.
I'm not talking about
Birla's house.
I'm talking about Birla. I'm talking about all the Swamijis who talk about this, but have been to a Jhopalpati and lived with a very poor man and not have a meal to eat and then do their job. Very few of them does that. Hardly anybody.
I think you are right.
દિનેશભાઈ, એક ક્વેશ્ચન છે ને, અમે ત્યાં યોર્કમાં હતા ને, તો મેં તો સીધું જ પૂછ્યું હતું, રમેશ ઓઝા અથવા તો મુરારી બાપુને પૂછ્યું હતું આ ક્વેશ્ચન. મેં કીધું કે તમે ઓલવેઝ મોટલ ઓનર્સ ને એ લોકોની ઘરે જ ઉતરો છો, તો બીજાને ત્યાં, તો એણે એક સરસ જવાબ મને આપ્યો. એણે કે સાચું કહું બેન, કે એ લોકોને અહીંયા ટાઉનમાં ઓળખે વધારે બધાને. બધા એ લોકો વ્યવસ્થા કરી શકે. નોટ સારો એર કન્ડિશન રૂમ ની વાત નથી કરતી કે હું કરતો હોય કે એવું આમ મને કીધેલું એને.
I think that is a valid point. I think it is the attitude, Dinesh bhai. Attitude of being detached, of not wanting something, accepting something. I'm actually I was listening to a lecture of on Vedanta Sara by Sarvapri Anandji. You know, one American woman asked him a question. You know, this woman, Gabrielle, works in UNO. So this is, she lives in New York, and she asked a question. I think it was a very nice question. She says that I have been listening to you, Swami, but more I listen, more depressed I get. For the simple reason is that I see a lot of suffering in New York when I walk near the UNO building, and a lot of homeless people and a lot of people on the street. Now I know that I can help some, but I cannot help all because I don't have the financial wherewithal to be able to help everyone. So now, originally when I did something good for one, I felt good about it in my life. But now that I'm listening to you, I feel bad because now I want to help everybody and I cannot do it because I don't have a way to help anybody. So what should I do? You know, that's a question she asked. So this is what Sarvabhayanand says. Well, first of all, it is your attitude that counts. Knowing fully well is there is a limitation of what you can do for everyone who is suffering. So do the best you can within the limited resources that you have. And even if you end up helping one or two people, be good, feel good about the fact that you did. And then what she asked, so then what? He says, then after that, just use your prayer to God and see God helps other suffering people. That's what he answered. You know, saying that you do the best you can. Don't feel guilty that you cannot help everybody in New York who is homeless because you cannot. Nobody can. So that was his answer. Saying,
આપણે તો કહીએ છીએ ને કે ભાઈ જે જે કોઈને આપણે એક કે બે માણસને ઉભો કરી શકીએ તો we think that I think this is what we can do only.
This is within the limitation.
Yeah, we cannot help everybody.
થાય તેટલું કરો.
I mean, to be honest with you, Dinesh bhai, what you guys do in Hindu charity, obviously there are a lot more kids in Austin market, right? Who need help. There is a limit to what you can do.
Right.
But even if you did for 50 or 10 or dozen, 20 kids, still better than no kids. So do the best you can. And second, the way I see is this: if your attitude is that to give the best you can, regardless of what you do, and actually there is a statement further down. He says it is not what one does, but how one does that matters. So it is not the verb, but it is the adverb that makes the difference. So I think it is an attitude question. How does one, you may live in wealth, like Swamiji, all these people who come, they may live in a good house and they may be driven in Mercedes or Lexus, of Dinesh Bhai's Lexus, but as long as his attitude is that he is here to help other people, what difference does it make whether he is driven in a Honda or Yugo for that matter? So yeah, you're right. There is a definite discrepancy there, but I think it's a question of attitude.
Okay, thank you.
ના અને પછીથી આપણે હવે પેલાએ આટલું આપ્યું ને મારે આટલું આપવું પડે જે બધા પેલું કેવું કે સ્ટ્રેસ થઈને તમારે કામ કરવું પડે then it is a different story. Yeah, મારા મનથી મેં આપ્યું, that is the good enough.
If you go by what Mormons do, Mormons are obligated to, when they join the church like Romney and those guys, they commit themselves that they will pay whatever they will commit to 10% of their income to the cause, whatever the church believes it to be good cause. So they do it. At least some of them do it, not necessarily all of them do it, but at least some of them do it. So I think it comes down to your attitude, more or less. You may or may not be willing to part with everything, but like who sent it recently? The guy who has multiple duty free shops all over the world.
Yes,
And
the apartment marriage.
yeah, he lives in an apartment and he has given away all his wealth.
Yeah. So, somebody sent it that one. Yeah.
Yes.
WhatsApp માં હતું.
Yeah, right. And I actually, after I read, I didn't know who that was. So I actually went to the website to see, to verify that this information is true. And it is true.
Okay, I will help you move everything out of your house into your apartment. And you
Yeah, good.
do dinner charity.
Actually, Warren Buffett has already committed to everything that once he leaves, his kids each one will get $1 billion. And rest of the money will go to whatever the charity that he has agreed, whatever he has committed to.
Actually,
રાજનભાઈ,
Bill Gates does not want to give more than $10 million to each of his kids. I just read today, and in his divorce proceedings, everything that's going on right now, his ex-wife now is trying
They will
to,
split, I'm sure.
more money to the kids, but he has basically said no more than $10 million to each kid. From his,
I'll be with
જાનાબેન,
ના હું તો એ કહેવા માંગતી હતી કે આ સાંઈ બાબાનું જે એની જીવન છે એ કેટલું સિમ્પલ ને હતું, તો એનું ક્યાંય તમે આમ આપણે કેમ આપણા પેલા કેમાંય ઉલ્લેખ આવતો નથી.
સાઈ
તમે
બાબા.
સાંઈ બાબાની વાત કરું છું.
I'm sure that people who believe in Sai Baba actually they believe that he
ના
was
એટલે
divine.
એ તો બરાબર જે માને છે ને તો માને જ છે, પણ આમ તમે તમે અરવિંદોનો આનો દાખલો એવા તમે સાંઈ બાબાનું ક્યાંય મેં સાંભળ્યું નથી કે કોઈ પાસેથી કે સાંઈ બાબાએ આમ કીધું કે આ સાંઈ બાબાએ આમ કર્યું, સાંઈ બાબાએ આમ કર્યું, એવું
think
ક્યાંય.
What happens is this:
હમ.
there is this distance of history makes a difference. Okay, once you go in the history books, it begins to percolate in this consciousness of the people, good or bad. I mean, we talk about 3 giants or maybe 4 giants of Hinduism in last century. Ramakrishna and Vivekananda has 1, Aurobindo has 2, Ramana Maharshi has 3, and Mahatma Gandhi has 4. As the time passes by, I'm sure some of those, and including somebody might be flattering, but one of the guy who made a comment to Sarvapriyanan's lectures underneath, he said that Sarvapriyanan is a modern day Vivekananda. And it may very well happen. 50 years from now, it may turn out that he will be revered and viewed as a next Vivekananda that came and spreaded Vedanta in the West.
1 minute બાકી છે.
Okay, I think we'll stop at this slide and then we'll carry forward next time. But am I making sense?
11 ને તો
11.
Yeah. Now, another thing, Kabir is also one of the kind of, I can see the sant thai gaya. Being a Muslim, Hindu, what a difference છે, plus and minus તમે જુઓ તો. But still, kind of, તમે કર્મયોગાની વાત કરો તો being a કસાઈ નો ધંધો હતો એનો, પણ કેટલા બધા વણાટનો ધંધો હતો, પણ somebody નો કસાઈ નો પણ હતો, whatever, somebody ને. But they become sant.
You're right. But Kabir and Surdas and Tulsidas and